This is BluLunch, Sheridan College's own sports podcast, hosted by Jay and Drew.
Back again for BluLunch. I'm Drew, and I'm here with Jay, and we got a lot of stuff to talk about today. It seems when we do our show, though, we'll do it on a Monday or a Tuesday, and the very next day something big happens, and this is exactly what happened last week. We did our show on the Tuesday, and Brian Burke gets canned on the Wednesday, and we can't talk about it until the next week.
That gives us almost a week.
It happened with John Gibbons being hiring. I think it happened with Ari Dickey. I think they were announcing the they announced the trade while we were doing the show. Yeah. So, but yeah, it's good times. But we're gonna look into the Burke firing, how Nonis is gonna do. The NHL schedule's out. We'll probably talk Bobby Luongo. And we're going to try to fit some NFL in, some Colin Kaepernick.
Yes.
Justin's new favorite player. Throw Kirk Cousins out the window. Never mind it's Cousins. Colin Kaepernick.
Yes.
We'll look at the meltdown in Denver, Atlanta's comeback, and even though they lost, how impressive Seattle was this year.
And they're going to have a big year next year. But anyways, we'll get to that.
We'll start with Burke, and I don't know about, I think everybody's reaction was the same. Very surprising. But I remember we talked about this a month ago, and we talked whether Burke's tenure was successful. And I'm doing this just to prove that I'm right. But
you're not right, because that's not why he was fired. But go on. Go ahead. Go ahead.
He's
continue.
Just trying to defend himself. But anyways, I said it was not a successful tenure in Toronto during Burke's 4 years. And Justin said it was because he built the farm up. He brought in players, like the roster was bad, so there were positives too. But the question is, did Burke deserve to be fired?
From a hockey standpoint, one could argue that no. Some or most would say that he probably should have been given the option to finish out this season, see if they make the playoffs. That's kind of why during Burke's press conference last Saturday, he said that it was like a 2x4 to the back of the head, which is classic Burke. But you know, I don't know. For me personally, I understand why he was fired. From that standpoint, I think it was something totally different as the straw that broke the camel's back, so to say, or so to speak. His attitude, his demeanor, stuff like that. You know how he is. I'm sure you know, among lots of people who are Toronto sports fans, know that Brian Burke was very encompassing when it comes to media, when it comes to attention for his team. He was the face of the franchise, and I think that was the problem. I don't think ownership fired him because he was the face of the franchise. I think they fired him because his attitude kind of dictated a negative image. That's what I think anyways. I know the hockey standpoint, sure, they didn't make the playoffs for 4 years. But you know what?
They're still at square one, though.
No,
it's not like
I don't think they are, though.
It's not like they showed improvement a little bit, I think, when Reimer had that run. Not last year, the year before. And then last year...
Okay, but...
It almost seemed like last year they were trending up, because remember, they were in sixth in the East at one point, and it seemed that they were trending up, and then what Brian Burke said was the 18-wheeler went off the road.
Went off a cliff.
Yeah, whatever. And ever since then, it's been all downhill.
Well, me personally, it's funny because when I first heard, I was shocked. I was kind of, I don't know, I was kind of upset that he, you know, I liked Burke. I liked his trades. Did he, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Did he evaluate, drafted talent well? No. Like, I'm telling you this right now, Burke did not do that well. And overall, if I was going to try to look for a hockey reason for him to be fired, that would be my reason. Along with the fact that when it came to making big decisions, whether to sign Suter, whether to sign Brad Richards, whether to sign even Ilya Kovalchuk, those kind of contracts, he wouldn't have anything to do with it. And I know that the Leafs are better off now after the CBA, but think about it. Even though they're better off, these teams still have these superstar players on them. The Leafs don't. And that's because of Burke. You know, who knows? Who's to say that if Burke was still the GM even a year from now, when it comes to free agents, like say Ryan Getzlaf, what if when it comes to the summer, Ryan Getzlaf doesn't want to re-sign with Anaheim, and then when it comes to signing Getzlaf, he wants Getzlaf for $6 million when the maximum is $7 million. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he doesn't want to sign him for too long.
As a fan, some of the things Brian Burke said upset me. The fact that he would say, I'm not signing guys to these ridiculous contracts, or I don't send out offer sheets, or I don't talk to Edmonton because I don't like Kevin Lowe, but now Tambellini's there.
And then
but isn't the point to running a franchise winning? I'm sure...
Exactly.
If the Leafs put out an offer sheet to Steven Stamkos, even if it was matched, even if they gave him the most amount of money they could, you know Tampa's going to match no matter what.
But
But at least you're showing your fans that you're trying. But instead it's, no, we're not doing that. I don't believe in that. Like, you got to put yourself aside and do what's right for the team.
I know exactly what you're saying. But when you, to go along with that, what you're saying, the salary cap was, at that point, it's pretty close to $70 million. The Leafs could easily have offered him, Are you talking Stamkos?
Yes.
Stamkos.
He was an RFA, though. Like, he could...
They could offer
give him the offer sheet. That's all they could do.
Like a 10-year, 11-year deal, $7.5, $8 million each. Just not to,
They're not going to get him no matter what. We know that.
They're not going to get him, but
at least, yeah.
Exactly.
Show that you're serious.
And Burke is never going to be that guy. First of all, I was going to say he was never going to be that guy, which makes more sense because he's not the GM anymore. But he was never ever going to be that guy for the Leafs.
We also don't know whether we could have. I know Burke said, he offered more money to Brad Richards with less term, so it averaged out to be better for Richards. But Richards went to New York because it was longer term and more money. Do you know what I mean?
Well,
Richards would average less
I understand.
in New York. If he came to Toronto, he would average more a year, but he would be under less term. And that's what Burke offered.
Well, if I'm Richards, I'd go for longer term too. He's not a young guy. He wants to sign, how old is he? 30, 31, 32, something like that. He wants to sign a 10-year deal. He doesn't want to sign a 5 or 4-year deal. It doesn't matter how much they're offering him a year.
So what about the timing of this firing?
Ridiculous.
Why a week and a half before the season? Why not the end of last year? Why not during the lockout? Why not let Burke have his 48 games? Maybe Toronto squeezes into the playoffs. Maybe they don't. If he doesn't make the playoffs, you can him. Why don't they just say, you got 48 games to make the playoffs, and if you don't, you're gone? Why don't they make that decision?
You can't. You can't.
And then there's other rumors, though. Well, he got fired because he didn't want to bring in Luongo. But
that's not true.
But if Burke's looking out for himself, he's going to bring in Luongo to win.
Exactly.
So it's a lose-lose. But why?
But that wasn't the reason,
Why did they fire him a week and a half before the season? It makes no sense.
It doesn't make sense, but I could probably make sense of it. It's not like I'm going to get an answer. It's not like you're going to get an answer from anyone in MLSE, because God knows that would be the right thing to do. But I think that, if I was going to make a guess as to why they decided to make this bonehead decision, I don't even think they realized that they'd get this much flack from it as well, because it's been, for the last week, nonstop, they've been getting flack for it. But I think if you need to think of a logical reason why they picked this time of year to do it, right before the season, a week before the season. Like what you were saying, tell them you either make the playoffs or you're fired. They never wanted him.
Yeah, it's new ownership.
to make the playoffs.
Well, it's new ownership.
Like, they don't want him in the organization, period. So if they said that to him, yeah, he would pull off the Luongo deal. He would, who knows what trades he could pull off. He's good at trades, but that's not the point. The point is, if his job depended on it, Burke would make the playoffs. He said that how many times in the last 3 or 4 years, right?
That's another thing, though. Sorry,
and they don't want him to do that because they don't want him. So they fired him before he had a chance to. What happens if the Leafs won 10 games in a row to start the season? They're going to make the playoffs unless they lose 15 games after that, which is really unlikely. They made the playoffs, and what are they? They can't fire Burke after that.
That's another thing, though. Burke used to say, and we talked about this last week, he comes out, he sees a speaker in front of him, and he tells what's on his mind. And one of the things was, we're not going to become the 8th seed to go get our butts kicked in the playoffs. And yet LA goes and wins the whole thing.
Oh, don't even get me started on that.
And I heard a comparison, which was a good comparison, which I told you last week. When the Raptors were 4-19, don't you think that it was time to fire Brian Colangelo? He's in the last year of his contract.
Well, he's in the last year of his contract.
But why
right?
didn't they fire him?
But they were never going to be a playoff team.
But why didn't they fire Colangelo?